Okay, everyone. I want to say thank you for being here. My name is Sarah Nelly. I am the research manager here at the Jornada Experimental Range. And we'd like to welcome everyone here today to be part of our second installment of the Discovery Friday seminar series that we host each spring. I'd really like to welcome Sherry Spiegel with the Jornada Experimental Range. We're highlighting the all of the century experimental ranges, so the all southwestern experimental ranges. So last month we started with the Santa Rita, which is where we are in this room, and we're moving east. So next is Jornada in New Mexico, and then our third experimental range will be Sonora Experiment Station in Texas, and that'll be next month. And so, but I'd like to have everyone join me in welcoming Sherry. Thank you so much. I'll let her, she'll do a much better job at introducing herself than I will. So Sherry, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. It is wonderful to be part of the Century Network. My boss, Brandon Bestelmeyer, was supposed to be here today, but I get to be here instead. So thank you. And I know he would have really enjoyed being here. And so yeah, so thanks for having us. So we are here to talk about the Jornada and contextualize it in these century-long efforts for rangeland ecology and management. So I don't know if I can see you folks, but who has anyone been to the Jornada? I can't. Does the camera turn or anything, or is this? I don't know. You don't have to. I'm just
Brett
curious.
may have to talk. Myself and Brett in the room have been there before. No one else here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think we're about how far? 4 hours
Yeah, you're about
east of
3.5 hours east of us here in Tucson.
th 3.5 hours east. Yeah. All right. So we're here. And I'm gonna see if I can flip some slides. Okay, so yeah, the Jornada Experimental Range is in the northern Chihuahuan Desert, and then in southern New Mexico, and we're really at the confluence of New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. I am a rangeland, it's called a research rangeland management specialist, but I'm a federal scientist focused on rangeland ecology and management. And so I've been with the Jornada for 10 years. Before that, I was in grad school, and actually I came from the same lab as Mitch McLaren. So we are related in that way. I think you guys do a lot of work with Mitch. And so I am one of several lead scientists here at the Jornada. We have folks focused on soils, livestock, wind erosion, long-term monitoring, ecology, just how deserts work. We have, we'd like another social scientist, but we have some folks working on social science and then some precision management technologies. So this is our team here, and I'm proud to be a part of the team. Brandon is our research leader, and he leads us in all sorts of ways, both administratively and scientifically. So our mission has been and continues to be to solve problems in arid rangelands. And I'm sure you guys have heard these different statistics over the years of how much of the earth rangelands cover. So there's various land grabs, but one of the big stats is that it's about 54% of the earth's surface are rangelands, and a lot of those are semi-arid and arid rangelands. So there's quite a bit of real estate that we claim. And so the Jornada, I'm in the office right now. We're on the New Mexico State campus in Las Cruces. And so we're an agricultural research service unit, but on campus. So that gives us some special options to be like a hybrid of both federal government and state government university kind of unit. Um, And we're here located in Wooten Hall, and I'll be talking about the man behind the hall in a few minutes. And so being on campus, we get to be part of this cooperative program with the NMSU College of ACES, we call it. So it's Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences. But yeah, if you guys are ever in Las Cruces, please stop by. So that's our office, but about 25 miles north of town, we have a 300 square mile living laboratory, or we're starting to call it a lighthouse. But so the Jornada itself is 300 square miles. And then if you could just look at the bottom right, it's my right, and I'm thinking it's probably also your right. The college ranch is in pink, so that's the Chihuahuan Desert Rangeland Research Center that we're right next to. And then we actually share a mountain range with White Sands Missile Range. But so the Jornada itself is 300 square miles. College Ranch adds another 100 square miles. So that's what we're dealing with. We have hundreds of studies going on here, similarly to I think what you guys have, and they're part of 4 research networks. So these are studies run by not only those lead scientists that I showed, but also folks from all over the world and from these four networks. So that's us in a nutshell there. Can you hear me okay
Yes.
so far? Okay, cool. So as part of the Century Club, we were established in 1912 to conduct large-scale research on rangeland management and restoration. When were you guys established?
1902.
Oh, you beat us. Okay. Um, yeah. So this is us in 1912. And I think you were like a model for what would happen here. So Elmer Wooten was seeking another large rangeland research station to complement was already happening in Santa Rita. And so Elmer Wooten is a scientist originally from Indiana who came to New Mexico State, interested in botany and also land management. And so he was born in 1865 and made his way over here. And so these are some of his main contributions are the range problem of New Mexico with a key quote of examination of the range shows it to be run down and not nearly as productive as it might be and as it once was. And so we're still working on the legacy of those notions. And so with that in mind, he worked toward reserving for this research station for the improvement of native pastures. And so, again, this legacy and just what folks came together to work on was quite, yeah, I think you can call this degradation. I know sometimes that word is a little bit controversial, like what's really degraded and what is not. I think we can all probably get behind this one. I mean, as you know, there was just like a spike of livestock, into the region in the late 1800s, early 1900s with the railroad, and that coupled with drought and some severe cold snaps really affected our grass cover. So it was mostly black grama, especially on the sandy flats. And that black grama is quite palatable. And so the livestock and the drought, of course, and other climatic factors triggered this just precipitous loss of grass. And where we are, it's super windy, especially in this season. We're dealing with some winds today. The topsoil gets scoured pretty easily. So the loss of grass, as we came to really study very closely later, triggers a state transition. And anyway, this was all happening in the early part of the century ago. So with that in mind and kind of as the rationale, the earliest research here was on appropriate stocking rates, long-term vegetation monitoring, and grass restoration attempts. I would assume, is that pretty similar for your place? I wish I would have seen the talk on your place last month. What
Yeah,
was it pretty similar early days?
yes.
Yeah. And what's funny is like we've come a long way thinking about these things, but this is pretty much exactly what I work on now. So it makes me feel like I'm doing nothing new. I just have some like new understanding around it. But anyway, so yes, so these were some of these early research here trying to deal with that degraded range and loss of grass. Um, However, and this is where things got a little different, is there was a major drought in the 50s that you can see in the literature and in the thinking behind all the science that it led to a change in paradigms or a paradigm shift around less of a um, blaming or putting like really tightly coupling livestock grazing or human influence with these dynamics and really understanding that drought and climate really swamp out a lot, are really the king of these of what we're seeing out there. But so some of there's a quote about the heartbreaking loss of Black grandma, especially after all those years of the protective effort. So this is the middle of the 1900s, that kind of led to this different paradigm shift and thinking more about the influence of the abiotic factors more than the biotic factors, or both together as really strong influences on what's happening out there. And so this has come to be known in rangeland ecology and management as a set of terms, and a theory around equilibrium to and non-equilibrium thinking. So is that something you guys work on over there, or is this
Yeah,
kind of a theoretical basis, I would
yeah,
imagine? Yeah.
yeah,
So, so the thinking that this shift is, there's no stable stocking rate for livestock. So that's a first myth that was really worked on in the earlier part of the 1900s, and then the drought helped to see, okay, there's no set one correct stocking rate or optimal. And you have to deal with your conditions and the variability to set the best one. Temporal variability in weather drives large variations in forage availability over short time periods. So you'll keep seeing the words variability, variation, time and space. So it's just really seeing that there is just crazy variation out there in space and time that really swamps out what we may be trying to do with cattle stocking and with restoration efforts, even though those things are important and can be functional, need to be kind of thought about in terms of this variability. So again, spatial variability in soils, landforms, and rainfall creates large variations in forage variability, availability over short distances, and abrupt changes in vegetation and soils can be permanent. So this is the type of thinking that was inspired by that major drought, and that has been more codified and worked on over the years at the Jornada and of course, Santa Rita and other major arid rangeland like scientific groups like thinking about this, especially in terms of how policy around pastoralists is developed, like really understanding that even though it might be easy to blame pastoralists for stuff we're seeing out there, it's really important to contextualize it in all of this variation and the abiotic factors, the rainfall and the soils being key. So with that in mind, that kind of theoretical basis in mind, these are the types of challenges we think about here at the Jornada and have been really explored for the last, yeah, like 70 years. So, one of the main challenges for rangeland communities, both for the vegetation community and the human community, is this low ecosystem productivity and high variability, which makes it difficult to predict management responses. So this is a time series of a photo taken from the same place, and it really looks different. It's all pretty low productivity, although we're seeing some good grass-ish response in the left and some Forbes there. In the left, in the 2007 one, and then in 2024 going out there and seeing just how different it is. I'm sure you guys deal with this quite a bit as well. And we're starting to use the map on the right is the from the Rangeland Analysis platform, which is one of the tools that we administer here. So and I'll talk about this later, but this is a free platform that shows vegetation cover and production over time. And so when we really dig into this tool and look at the whole ranch in terms of herbaceous production, it really drives the point home just how different things can be in a very short temporal period and then in short spatial distances. So low ecosystem productivity, high variability, difficult to predict management responses. Another major challenge that we work on here is how that low ecosystem productivity and high variability is vulnerable to abrupt and persistent change. So again, we have a nice time series here from 1920 to 2001. And so this concept of state change or of abrupt and usually non-reversible change is something that we've worked on here at the Jornada quite a bit, and really understanding the landscape in terms of land potential of certain soil and geomorphic units and how vegetation can change over time on those units. And so that's a good example of state change here, where on the left we see a nice perennial grassland, and on the right we're seeing shrub invasion, or the invasion of shrubs, more shrubs, and then the loss of grass. So the shrubs end up out-competing the grass because of the deeper roots, and then the grasses go, and then the soil is exposed to wind and scouring, and it's very hard then to return those interspaces to grass. And I'm sorry if I'm talking about like basic stuff here that you guys work on all the time. So pardon me is that what's happening?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, that's good. I know you see this all the time, but this is like the Jornada like sort of words around it. And then also, so we're just talking about vulnerability to abrupt and persistent change, but just going with this theme of variability. The vulnerability is spatially variable. Not all parts of the landscape might be vulnerable to this change. Like, so on our place, we think about things in terms of patches and how certain patches can really quickly respond during drought to a certain amount of grazing, but then the same patch won't respond in the same way. And that has to do a lot with like the underlying geomorphic and soil template. We have a lot of these what we call run-in sites where water can pool over time. And so you have more like clay-rich soils and even some standing water from time to time. And it tends to be that the grass is in there, usually Tobosa doesn't, and like vine mesquite, like they're not as vulnerable to these shifts as the ones that are in the uplands. So we know that there's that vulnerability, but we also kind of don't always know. You can't say it's going to happen everywhere. So that's another challenge that we think about. So with all of those kind of ecological challenges, there's challenges for the people who work and live on rangelands. There tends to be misunderstandings about land health, land degradation, and the role of pastoralism, the role of grazing. Also, part of this is just the difficulty to determine what is healthy versus what is degraded. Because like back to that geomorphic template, certain patches just already have low productivity. They always have. It's like this is one of our gravelly sites, and so you wouldn't really expect much grass here anytime. And in fact, it didn't really change much over time from 1912 to 2015, but folks kind of not familiar with arid landscapes might see that and be like, that's degraded, take all the cattle out or take, whatever practice is happening there and, blame it on some communities, human communities that where it's no blame should be had in the first place. And it's certainly not their fault for this kind of template of low productivity. So then along with that type of misunderstanding, it's really hard, we find, to measure real costs and benefits and then the related trade-offs of rangeland management approaches because of that shifting, that variability in space and time. Also, these misunderstandings of what's healthy, what's degraded. It can be challenging to really understand how do certain practices perform and what are the trade-offs of those. And so a big question that we always ask ourselves is how can science respond? We know we have a certain niche in the world and we want to do our part to help build understanding and make life a little easier for the communities that rely on rangelands. So our approach is building knowledge to increase resilience in rangelands and the communities that depend on them. So you can see our hopeful rainbow there. And so I'm gonna now talk about a major effort that we have here at the Jornada, really to think through these cost benefits and trade-offs of rangeland management, and also how we're using some precision ranching systems to do that. But before we move on, does anyone have any questions about this or comments, this first part?
You showed a picture of 1912 and 2015. How do we know that there wasn't something in between where there was some grassland productivity?
That's a really good question. We should probably show a middle photo here. The idea with this photo, yeah, well, you know what? In fact, there are ways to look at that now with this rangeland analysis platform that we have. We can look at time series back to 1986 on this particular spot. I happen to know about this photo series that this pretty much looks the same every time they took one, but we should include more there. It's a very good question. Good point. And this could be misleading.
Well, I would think that if you looked at precipitation, and I agree it'd be over a wide area, but if you looked at the general precipitation, it might lead you to believe that there wasn't much grassland development.
On this particular spot?
Yes.
Yes.
It would be a generalization, but you could use precipitation data as a little bit of an approximation.
It's so true. And in fact, I mean, 2015 was one of our, yeah. This was a year that was closer to some of our wet years. And so we still see kind of just like a little bit of herbaceous growth there. But yeah, that's a very good point. I feel this photo series would benefit from some other temporal graph of either rainfall or like another photo in the middle there. Yeah. But I will say, so one of the exciting things about this rangeland analysis platform that I'll talk about in a bit, I mean, it only goes back to 1986, but you can just on a pixel in space, you can see just like a point on the ground, you can see the production at that particular place over time, which is helpful from 1986 on.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Let's assume that I own a square mile of rangeland. With the data you've collected over these years, are you at a point where you can come onto my land and tell me the optimum management practice, how many cattle per acre, what types of grasses I should be fostering, anything which would improve the productivity of that square mile?
We are getting there, and that's what I was gonna talk about in a bit. We're working on a platform to put all this century of research about how the rangelands work, together with knowledge from the region about what's working for ranchers and land managers, and coming up with a way to to look at the template of the land, both over soil and vegetation, work with the rancher to talk about their goals. So we're getting there.
Great.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Is there a grass that has deep enough root to outcompete shrubbery that's new, young, and it could at least keep up with shrubs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the ones that have the shrubs that have made it to our so mesquite is one of the dominant shrubs on the sandier bits. So it it's on the sand sheet, the grasses that tend to grow there, their roots are not deep. They tend to not be deep enough. So that's on the sandy, what we call ecological sites, or like we call it the sand sheet. But on these more gravelly areas, well, no, I'm sorry. So this is one of these run-in sites that I was talking about where the water comes in a bit more. And so these grasses do, as you could like, they're doing well, and so the shrub competition is less of a issue. Did that answer your question? It's like mediated by the soil and hydrology
I was just
dynamics.
wondering if you could broadcast some grass that's got deep
Yeah.
root
Yeah.
in an area that hasn't been overgrown yet by shrub.
Yes.
If you
We
could
are, yes.
mitigate the shrub taking over the area.
We're trying that. So we are trying that near Mount Summerford, which is on the college ranch. So yeah, shrubs are not there yet. Frankly, not much is there yet. And so we got some, this is a whole other topic, but we got some manure from the local dairies that you see on I-10, and we composted it and we spread it, and then we use this imprinter to get to fix it into the ground, and we seeded, to your point, with some grasses known to do well in the Jornada Basin. And so we're going to be monitoring that over time, with the aspiration that the grass does better than any shrubs that come in.
Do you have small plot work associated with your large range work that would evaluate different grasses from all over the world, that would account for deep rooting plants, non-invasive plants, that would benefit the ranchers that are out there having to make decisions?
Yeah. So we work closely with seed companies, when we did that restoration deal, which I'll talk about in a bit, we worked with seed companies. That was actually some of our earlier work. Now, is it still, does it, with what's known now about grasses, there is some of that work, yes, on the college ranch, and that's our neighbor, and that's part of a larger restoration network. And I'd be glad to use some of the results there. Yeah, if you're looking for certain like functions, like grass trait functions that would be of interest, like, yeah, we could certainly provide information on that, as we know about kind of in our part of the basin and range world, if that would be helpful. There's also, I mean, there's the USDA plants database, that gives some kind of like function ideas. But again, this platform that I'm about to talk about, that's exactly that. It's called AgPix. That's the type of information we're hoping to put all in one place for ranchers to help them make decisions and make benchmarks of like success and like their desired outcomes. So have you had luck finding that kind of information before? Like, where do you usually look? Or,
Well, I'm not a ranger from Arizona.
okay, yeah. Or I was gonna say whoever you're speaking on behalf of.
I'm a potato guy from Wisconsin.
You're a potato guy?
Right.
Is that what I don't know what I heard. Yeah, we are. Yes, so we have all this the kind of egg-headed like science that we've done, and we're putting into this platform that I will now bore you with the platform. So basically, yeah, so a major focus that we're working on now is this platform called the Agricultural Performance Indicator and Context Knowledge System, which is a lot of words for an acronym because we're with the government, so we need an acronym. So it's called AgPICS. And so these are 24 performance indicators that a bunch of agricultural and sustainability and resilience scientists and producers work together to identify these performance indicators. So the theory is that there are these four domains of like whatever you want to call it, sustainable, regenerative, resilient farm or ranch, and then there's these 8 pieces in the middle of the Trivial Pursuit thing are these are attributes of a ranch, of a desired ranch, sustainable, resilient, regenerative here. So it would have agroecosystem products, land and water health, healthy air, producer well-being, profitability, and so forth. So those are the attributes in the middle, and then these little indicators out here, these are the performance indicators of how well each of those attributes is performing. It's a way to gauge how those attributes are going. And so the vision here, we're working on this interactive database where a producer would use this. Right now, scientists are working closely with the producers using this, but eventually the vision is it's like an autonomously used thing where a producer can set benchmarks for their desired outcomes of what they want to see on their place, and that's in gray here, and then measure data against those benchmarks or those goals, and that's in pink here. Also, this would provide a way to look at your place or the ranch in comparison to others in the region. And this is really this integrator of all the data and knowledge that we have developed over the years at the Jornada, and then also with our networks like the Century Network and then the other networks we work in, and really provide information and knowledge for users to set these benchmarks and to like try the things on their piece of ground, on their square mile, with respect to these indicators that they care about. Now, this is 24 indicators. We would never imagine anybody using all 24. It's a menu, but it can help look at trade-offs among them. So this is where we're bringing this. We right now have 11 participating ranches and farms that we're working with. One of them is actually in McNeil in Arizona. And so these are like kind of some of the early adopters of this approach. So kind of working through this process, this AgPICS process, identifying indicators that they care about, setting benchmarks, and then collecting data against those benchmarks. So the green shows farms, the orange shows ranches, and then the purple is what we're calling a lighthouse for now. So a lighthouse is there's this network of things called living labs. And so lighthouses are really living labs are regional laboratories where farms and ranches and scientists like try new practices and test practices. And then a lighthouse is where you get very rigorous and like anal retentive about all the measurements and like being really super specificity. So we're kind of calling ourselves a lighthouse for the moment, and I could see purple stars like populating the whole map. And so anyway, these are the ranches we're working with in orange so far. Um, and so as the Jornada Lighthouse, we test practices for users of this platform, for this interactive platform. And so something that we've been working on recently, again, with this idea of the heterogeneity and the variability and the non-equilibrium system in mind and all those challenges, we have worked on a heritage biotype of cattle called Raramuri Criollo. So this is a group of cattle that Christopher Columbus brought over on his second journey in 1502. They made their way up what is now South America, up to Central America, and then into what's now the US. So there's some these genetics are in cracker cattle in Florida and then Texas Longhorns and then in Raramuri Criollo. And so the idea is that these cattle have higher heat tolerance. They go farther from water, so there's less erosion around the watering points, and that they're really good with mothering skills with predators. So we're working on the Criollo both in a grass finishing market and then also crossing them with Angus so you get a black calf and you can send those through like typical channels. But so that's one practice again in the context of this like variability that we are trying. We've also developed this precision ranching system which has virtual fence and also real-time tracking of cattle, real-time tracking of water levels in the troughs. So ranchers don't have to drive, for like 4 hours to check one water and can get like a very quick signal of whether or not the water is leaking. Also, what's happening with their cattle as far as like interactions with predators or being sick, or even when giving birth, like identifying any kind of issues there. And then, of course, the virtual fence, which is a way to virtually fence in cattle in or out of an area. Yep, another thing we're testing are these supply chain options. I already mentioned that a bit. So really looking at grass finishing versus grain finishing and all the ins and outs and the trade-offs of that. And so this is the project that I mentioned with the seeding that we're doing with that manure, that composted dairy manure. And so this is where we're trying some of those types of grasses that we know have some success in the Jornada Basin with this imprinter technology and with the compost. And then our newest obsession is called precision adaptive ranch or rangeland management. We go back and forth with ranch and rangeland, but that's what I was going to talk to you about a little bit next. But do you guys have any questions about these other things? Have you guys heard of the Criollo cattle at all?
I've got one question on that. Whatever the cattle are, what do they taste like?
Yeah, great question. If you cook them, okay, so this is a debate, but so generally with grass finished animals, and these are a little bit smaller in their body conformation, that their shape is a little bit different than Angus, and that helps them like keep heat in different places, and that's what helps them have like a higher heat tolerance. They can like be out all day in the sun and keep moving around and looking for forage. Anyway, but to your question, it tastes really good. You got to cook always. We always have this debate of how long to cook like a grass finished steak. Like some people are like barely sear it and others are like, longer. And so it just goes with the grass finishing stuff, but people like it. Actually, there are some people marketing this in northern New Mexico, this breed. But yeah, by most accounts, it's tasty.
Yeah, so we have a researcher here as part of her PhD work. She did a study with Criollo cattle here in Arizona, and she did a meat quality
Yes.
as part of her PhD, and it turned out that comparatively to English breeds, the heritage breed Criollo beef was far more marbled and far more tender than traditional beef, and so she really likes it. So I can, if anyone's interested, I can get you her contact information on that, and I believe she's working to publish that work at some point. But she can tell you far more about it than I can.
That's great. Is she working with Dennis Maroney and Flavia?
Yeah, that's Flavi Adwan.
Yeah.
She's our virtual fence expert here with the University of Arizona and doing a lot of the work here on the Santa Rita Experimental Range.
When we drove up here this morning, we saw animals that looked just like that one. Would we have seen those out on the range?
No, they're not here.
But you saw them.
Okay, so we won't take one home for lunch.
No.
Yeah, so this was an interesting, yeah, so oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, no, yeah, our researchers about 15 years ago had heard tell of these cattle in Chihuahua. They're from the Copper Canyon, so they made their way up and then were like relegated into the Copper Canyon area in Chihuahua, and they have had really little crossbreeding with like conventional beef breeds. So that's why we can call them a biotype. They're like very much like a heritage genetics. And so yeah, we got like 10 of them over the border about 15 years ago. And so been doing research on that. And then also Dennis Maroney and then another collaborator, Cindy Toll, who's the one in McNeil who were doing the indicators with her. So they both had another breed or another herd or group of these. And so, yeah, it's been a really nice research network on this. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell, so yeah, so if you're already working a lot with virtual fence, but I'll tell you about our take on it, on what we're calling precision adaptive rangeland management. And this is an approach that we're testing here at this Jornada Lighthouse, and we plan to help folks who use this AgPix system understand the pros and cons of doing this and if it'll work for them at their place. So, all right. So I'll run through the ingredients of what we put into this precision adaptive rangeland management approach. So, we use ecological site and state maps. Do you guys have site and state maps on the Santa Rita?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, but I'll walk through those. This rangeland analysis platform that I already talked about that can show like production over time and cover over time on 1 pixel, 130 by 30 meter pixel, and increasingly on a 10 by 10 meter pixel. There's new products of that. So this is the rangeland analysis platform, precision ranching technologies. So the virtual fence, the cattle trackers, the water level trackers. We use cattle distribution predictions. So a lot of our research with the Criollo and just a lot of our research over the last 15 years has been predicting where cattle are going to go in relation to all that heterogeneity and variability. We use this thing called AgriWeb, which is an app that you can put in your inputs of ranching, like how much hay, how much other types of feed you're using, how much your vet inputs, veterinary inputs, and then your calf outputs or your beef outputs if that's how you measure stuff. And then this other ingredient is a dazzling research and ranch staff because we are very lucky to have a very talented group here. So I'll just run through some of these ingredients. So first, this is that rangeland analysis platform that I mentioned. So this is free online cover and biomass data available for all US rangelands. So this shows the production across the ranch, and in these different years. So the brown is less production. And this is herbaceous production that we're looking at now. And then the green is higher production. And so you can see major differences in just a year's time going back to that variability. The blue are rain gauges. So that's where we measure our rain. You can also I like to look at the pastures this way. So these are all of our pastures each one is a line, and it shows how much production of the grasses and the forbs, the herbaceous production, the grassy stuff, grew in each of these 16-day increments. So how much more they grew. And so we, over time. And so we use this to say, okay, which pasture is doing the best, like when we go to make our stocking decisions, kind of like who did the best over the last year. So the next ingredient are these precision ranching technologies. Already mentioned these. There's water level sensors, there's the GPS tracker and the no fence, and then the no fence virtual fence. So we have two things on one collar, this real-time GPS tracking and the virtual fence. And then this is all integrated in this dashboard that our close collaborators at NMSU are working on to put everything in one place. And it's an integrator because it can take different brands of virtual fence and different brands of trackers, put it all in one place and then tell you stuff about, hey, it looks like this one animal is looking like she's in trouble, like it might be like predation or it might be some issue with pregnancy. And so it alerts you to what's going on there and also alerts you to like water leaks. And then, okay, so we also work on these mapped ecological sites and states, and this goes back to that major variability on the ranch and in the arid Southwest. So this is a spatial representation of the vegetation within this, like a soil type. So the loamy, the draw, the sandy, the playette, those are all, and bottomland, those are all like the geomorphic types that we see out there, like the sand sheet or like the loamy bits. And then on top of that, we look at the change over time of vegetation. So, and we have, and so, yeah, and so we map these things. We map the kind of stable states of the vegetation at one given time, and this really helps us understand just what is happening where and kind of also what our land potential is. Because if we see a grassland state in a bottomland site, we know that that's going to be highly productive just because we know water runs into there, the grasses that are in there are more resilient, and probably there's fewer shrubs there. So this is just a way that we make sense of the landscape, but it sounds like you guys also do this. Okay, so putting it all together, here's our cauldron again. So this is again this precision adaptive rangeland management. So this is how we manage our cattle. We have two groups of cattle on the ranch. We have the Criollo and then we have an English breed, and we kind of compare their performance. And so, but this is how we decide where to put them and how long to keep them there. So first we use that rangeland analysis platform with the ecological sites and states to identify the most viable pasture and predict the available forage there in terms of AUMs or animal unit months. So we use that piece of the puzzle for that. We then, if there are sensitive bits out there, like we know there's our beloved black grandma. Oops. Yeah, we know that there's some of our more beloved, mega flora that we really want to protect. We might set initial exclosures out there with the virtual fence to keep the cattle out, initially. Now, I will say, and I forgot to mention this, we have a herd of like 400 oryx on the Jornadas right now. So it's these African antelope that were brought to the White Sands area for hunting in the 1960s, and they've made their way over here and they're eating a lot of our forage. So even though we can manage our cattle with specificity, we can't do much to manage them. So yet. So anyway, so we fence out the cattle from these sensitive areas. We then track cattle use hotspots using the dashboard. We see where they go to really often and they stay there a long time. And so we start to see like what are they attracted to? What might they be starting to use more than like we're comfortable with, especially if we know there are some of these plant species in there that we're trying to protect for whatever reason, or there's like archaeological stuff out there that we're trying to protect. So we look at the hotspots. If we see a hotspot that's been visited quite often we'll go out there and actually measure utilization and look to see how the soil's looking. So we send field crews out there. Um, Based on what they see, we might put another virtual fence exclosure to like protect an area, or we might try to fence them in to another area that we think could be grazed a bit more. So this is where that kind of adaptive management part of the adaptive rangeland management piece comes in the title of this approach. And then we again go back to our like what we would predict for the forage capacity there. And then once we know they crossed, like we predict that they'd have maybe 6 weeks of forage in a pasture using wrap. Once we know we crossed a threshold, we'll remove them from the pasture and then start over again, identifying a viable pasture and then moving around the circle there. And so again, the idea here is we're perfecting this here at the Jornada Lighthouse, and then we'll look at some of the pros and cons of doing this because it certainly might help our environmental or natural resources. We hope it maintains production. It might be too expensive for any like normal operation to run, although we always, whatever we do at the Jornada, we try to make it like just transportable and reproducible in an easier way. And so that's where we're heading to make it kind of like this is like a takeout box, but so make it reproducible and doable at any ranch in the Southwest. And so that's what we wanted to share with you guys today with the Century Network.
Do you
And
collar the oryx?
We do not yet. No, so far we have our best approach so far has been a few helicopter flights just to try to figure out where the heck they are and how many there are. But we don't there's like various permissions of interacting with them, so both around hunting and around collaring. So that's all like a work in progress of talking to the different landowners around us and figuring out how to manage them a little more, just manage them. Yeah,
Do you have any layman's love grass out there?
we do. We
Is it a
do.
problem?
And not yet. Some years we're like happy to see it when it's just drought, and nothing else is growing. But no, yeah, I think there were some trials on the college ranch, and it has found its way to other spots. But no, so far it's not a major issue. How about you guys?
It's a major problem here, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, Lehman Lovegrass was brought in the sixties, I believe, 50s or 60s, as a soil erosion mitigation tactic, and it is like a Middle Eastern grass, so it was something like, as you were saying earlier, to bring in to kind of help mitigate some of these things, and it's not from here, so it decided it really liked it and it took over. So yeah, we deal with a lot of Lehman love grass.
It's a fire hazard here too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting back, Sherry, to that seeding question, there was a question online that said, do you tend to favor native grasses when you seed?
Definitely, yes. They were all native. Now, whether they were we tried to get them as close to like being grown in the Jornada Basin as possible. Yeah, so they're native. Like some of them weren't like seed stock from the actual place, but that's what we tried for, close as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a reward system for the ranchers that might be participating in your programs that would help to benefit them financially or recognition wise? Would encourage
Definitely.
more ranchers to be involved?
Yes. So right now in this phase of this ag picks thing, we're working with the ranchers that we have very close relationships already. Or we already have very close relationships. So in the orange here, all three of these people have they have tested, they have used Criollo cattle from the Jornada, and we've also put in the precision system at their place. And so they're we're already close collaborators. We're also working on a grant where we can start and so they've benefited in various ways. I mean, with certifications, and then also just they feel that they've learned a lot about managing their places and they feel like it's been a beneficial relationship from like an informational standpoint, but there's also money coming. So we have a grant coming in where we're going to compensate their time and definitely compensate the time of other folks who come online in the next few years because their experiences and their feedback is going to help us like build this thing out to be usable for more people. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
I was intrigued by virtual fences. Are you
Yes.
using electronic devices in the ground and you control those and move those, and cattle have colors that are activated by these fences? So just a brief information about that.
Totally. Pardon me for not giving more background on that. Yeah, I mean, a very simple way to say it's kind of like a dog collar, like when you have the dog shock collar. Now, there's music that plays so it's satellite driven. So ours are, you can have the connectivity in different ways. So there's actually the thing on the collar. There's the piece on the collar that plays music first pardon. So you set the virtual fence boundary using a satellite tool, and you can actually on your phone or like on the dashboard like set a pasture, and then it registers with the collar. And then as cattle get closer to that line, music starts to play. And so that's like an early warning. It's like a tone. And then if they cross the line, there could be like a light, like electric buzz. If they cross back over the line, there's no what's it called? There's no like penalty for that because the idea like there might be a predator or something. So that's like a very nutshell how that works. And so ours, we have low raw WAN connectivity because we have such an extensive place. So that's like the Internet of Things. Some of them work off of cell towers. Like there's various ways that they work. And there's like 3 or 4 companies that are trying to.
Sorry, to learn more about virtual fencing, we do have the Rangelands Partnership has a really extensive virtual fence webpage on the rangelandsgateway.org /virtual fence. You can learn a lot more about how the technology works and learn about all of the vendors that are currently available and decision-making tools produced by a lot of partners across all of the land-grant institutions and experimental ranges that are using virtual fence technology. There's to help make decision implementation tools and things like that. So there's a lot more information out there.
For those in the room, it's the only way out. Look at the cattle in the pasture as you go out, and you'll see that they all have collars on.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah.
What kind of music?
Ours
Yeah.
ours are vibration, directional vibration. It's just one of the companies
Okay.
uses directional vibration. Others use a tone that beeps in frequency and intensity as they're approaching those one-way buffer zones. And so it just depends on the technology. Ours don't play AC/DC.
I have a question on the state of Washington. I think there's like 3 test farms up there.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
what are you looking for up there?
Thank you for asking that. So we are one of the research networks that we're part of, is called the Long-Term Agro Ecosystem Research Network. It's LTAR. And so, yeah, they're going to be, they grow a lot of pulses, like a lot of beans up there. And so they're going to be looking in the same terms with these same indicators, but with their own metrics of what might feed in, the best knowledge to feed in and data to feed into these indicators and look at how their places are doing in terms of land and water health and in terms of like profitability. So we'll be working on the same playing field in terms of these indicators, but the actual metrics will be quite different. Does that answer
Yeah,
your
and
question or is not yet? So they'll be looking at a lot of soil health. So this is new that they just came online, but certainly I know they're interested in soil health. They're interested in some biodiversity around their field edges. Yield, and then probably this returns to land, labor, and management.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
And we have another question in the audience.
Yeah, on the graph that you showed of the mapped ecological sites.
Yes.
What was the area of that? I mean, it looked like a lot of variability in a short distance. Yeah.
It was. So this is what we call the red lake pasture. This playa it sometimes looks red, so we call it red lake. But this is about, how big is this? This is about 5,000 acres. Um yeah, I should put a scale bar on there. But yeah, this is on the north western corner of the ranch. Yeah.
And you also had on the rangeland analysis, you had a graph,
Yes.
13-day productivity, so it would be easy to you look at, say, 20-day or 10-day productivity
Would it be easy to what?
to look at, say, 10-day or 20-day productivity.
That's a great question. It is it's only in 16-day because that's how often the satellite, like it's like the
Okay.
Landsat satellite, that's how often it does its flights over like every strip of the world. And so this model takes from that imagery and then integrates other types of data from like rainfall and like other kind of spectra stuff. And but yeah, so we're stuck with like the 30-day, or I'm sorry, 16-day chunk right now.
Well, I asked that because there's some evidence that, I mean, it's pretty speculative at this point, but some evidence that the variation in weather patterns is lengthening more from 8-day multiples more toward 10-day multiples. I mean, it's way too early to know that, but there's a little bit of
Mm.
evidence of that.
Oh, yeah, and thank you. And so that is the type of, so yeah, this figure, even though it's complicated itself, kind of belies the complexity of this model. It's like a process-based model. But yeah, I could tell them to look into that because certainly rainfall patterning and temperature plays into like what they show at per pixel. So and so there's a whole team trying to stay current on the best models out there. Um, so do you know like where to look for that kind of thing? Like where would you suggest looking?
Well, at this point, NOAA's Environmental Research Laboratory has done a little bit of work on that, not a whole lot. And
Okay.
also the folks at NCAR,
Okay.
the technology group at NCAR.
Up
And I think
in
it's
Fort,
oh, go ahead, sorry, Jerry.
just Fort I think they're in Fort Collins, or I thought they were. I don't know.
I think a tie-in in all this too is somewhat of a wrap-up that would make this interesting. So there's a couple questions. One is just about modeling, which I think is a critical term. So going back to the question that was asked before about that snapshot of time, I think it was 1912 and 2006 maybe. Looking at the lack of biomass and grass, and not having seen before, relating that to precipitation. Yep, that's, okay, 1912 to 2015. So those things, again, it is a snapshot in time, but I think what we're hoping to do with, the Santa Rita, the Jornada and Sonora Station is we all are working in the same mode in the same direction. And we're also now trying to figure out, okay, we have these data sets that are separate. How do we aggregate them for an even deeper view into more of a model-based approach? And so I wouldn't look at that photo as being somehow exclusive and just a visual. It's going to be related as a model-based approach of what does this mean for seasonal precipitation patterns in the years that preceded it. And so if there's a takeaway in this, and I think Sherry did an excellent job in summarizing all of this from the Jornada, it is what's the combined, what's the utility of all these data paired together? So rather than, hey, we're looking at grass here, virtual fence here, how do they fit together and how does that inform what we're trying to do? And now we're in a position where we can take that information, not just on the various stations, but ideally blend that as a southwestern perspective for long-term drivers of change. So this has been very insightful and helpful as far as that goes, and very interesting as well. I didn't know from my own perspective just the extent of extreme overlap. We're doing the same things in different locations with a lot of the same things. But yeah, very, very similar discussion. And so I think, again, it just emphasizes the need for blending what we have together as a combined approach. So this has been wonderful.
I'm so excited. That's great. And if I could just make a pitch, if we could, think about, I'm just gonna make a pitch to put like our combined knowledge into something like this to then be able to for somebody standing on a piece of ground, like what should my like benchmarks be of success? Like that. I'll just put you on the spot and say, can we think about that together?
Yeah, I think that's the hope. So this is the start of a very good thing. I think one more question too that we kind of got at was hey, if I'm a rancher, I have a square mile of property. What
Yes.
can you tell me about that? And the reality is, we've tried this in a way, and that goes back to the inception of both the Jornada and Santa Rita, where it was you have a fixed amount of acreage. How many cattle can you graze for what length of time? And so you made the point, Sherry, of, we're still doing the same thing today, 120 years later. We're asking the same questions, but we're able to examine it on a more granular scale. And so I don't think that there's a single metric that we can go back and say, oh, okay, you live in this place, go do these things. The reality is that we have to take into account those changes in time. Is this a wet year? Is this a dry year? Is it, what are the long-term trends? Are you progressing towards more arid? What are your precipitation values like? What kind of seeds are we looking at? And so it is a little more dynamic in that sense. So there's not like an easy button solution, but it's also not that far out of reach either, where we do have folks both through NMSU, USDA, University of Arizona as land grant institutions from Cooperative Extension that do that specific thing. And so Sarah in particular in this room and myself as a little bit of a backup to that has spent a lot of time out in rangelands across the Southwest specifically to help folks address those questions. What do we do from a watershed perspective? We have these kinds of grasses, but when we want these grasses, what kind of grazing practices are going to work? So it's always going to be a little case specific, but we do have the tools and the knowledge and the resources. It's just how do we best apply that to meet people where they're at? And I think that's the end goal we're trying to do. So.
What very well said, and I didn't include that in here, but the vision for this whole deal is like an interactive database where we can actually compile all the known knowledge around these things that have been built for, collectively 300 years in the 3 century ranges and beyond in our other networks, and really help just integrate all that information. So at least if somebody has a question about this one piece of ground that they're standing on, they can look at one place and like try to get that synthesized information in one place. It's a very high aspiration that, hope, but that's the idea here.
Well, again, this has been great. Let us know how we can help with that and all of the above. So we'll have a lot more to talk about.
All right.
But yeah,
Thank you.
Again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good to see you all. Thank you. I look forward to connecting in the future. So thanks.
Yeah, Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you at the next Discovery Friday featuring the Sonora Experiment Range.
Thank you.
Thank you.